Hey everyone, I want to show you today how to do a tab bound journal. And this is, I used fabric. You can use ribbon, lace, fabric, paper would be beautiful. And I love this because it doesn't have to be perfect. They don't all have to be the same size. And look how pretty it looks. And you have a lot of room to grow. And I think that surprisingly, it's not as loose as you would think it would be. I mean, it is a little, but it's supposed to be because there's room in it to grow. And you are able to open up and see your whole pictures. So let's get started on the tutorial. I'll show you how I built this. I'll show you where the prayer comes in. So stick with me. I'll show you a quick and easy way to make this journal. Okay, so my first step was I printed out all of the pages that I wanted from this digital. It is from, I can't remember. I'll have to post it below. Creative Junk Journal Kit or something like that on Etsy, but I will put the link below. But I loved these papers, so I printed all of them on tea-dyed papers. Beautiful tea-dyed papers. Look at that. And then just folded them in half. I printed them on normal 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, just like this, and then just folded it in half. And that's all I did. So after I did all of the digitals that I wanted, and I printed some on cardstock, some on regular copy paper. After I did that, I added in some other scrapbook papers that I had tea-dyed to fill up my book. The next step was I decorated my pages if I was going to sew or, you know, add on tabs, any gluing that I did. Like I sewed on this eyelash trim, and a lot of the gluing I did ahead of time because I thought it would be easier and safer for me not to glue my pages together. So I tried to do everything that wouldn't, you know, short of embellishments like adding the tags and things like that. I did everything beforehand. So now I'm ready to start binding it together. And really what I should have done is made my cover page separate. I should have glued it onto something else and put my binding on first, then put this on top of that, and it would have hidden these. But I didn't do that, and I had already decorated the back and this side, and plus I didn't want to lose all this beautiful tea dyeing. So what I decided to do was choose a different kind of fabric for the front cover. So I had just enough this lace, I think, to do the pieces, and I measured these on my cutting board, and they're roughly 1 3/4 inches, just short of, some are probably 2, but these are 1 3/4 inches. So then I decided, I figured out how many pieces of fabric, because I'm going to bind them with this fabric. Then I figured out how many pieces of fabric I was going to use, and to do that you count how many pieces you're going to bind in. So each sheet is 1, and like this one is going to be a signature. I'm going to actually sew it, do a 3-hole pamphlet stitch on it, but it will still be just 1 piece because I'm going to bind it all together. So I counted how many pieces that I have, and I have 20 pages. So then you divide that by 2, of course you get 10, and 2 pages is 5 tags, the way I'm going to do it, because I'm going to do 3, 2, 3, 2. So figure out how many strips you will need for every 2 pages. I mean, you can do, you know, 5, 4, 5, 4. That's 9 for every 2 pages. So figure out how many tabs you'll use for 2 pages. Then take that number times the set of 2 pages that you will have. Like I will have 10 sets of 2 pages. So 10 times 5 pieces for 2 pages, I will need 50 pieces. And I'm sorry, I know I made that way more difficult than I needed to. So I went ahead and cut those roughly all the same size. Now we're going to start with the cover. And I'm going to, something to keep in mind, and I did not when I started putting things together, because these envelopes were actually supposed to be bound in as well. But I can't do that because when you put down your 3 pieces, or however many pieces you're going to be using, 5, 6, whatever, you have to make sure that when you space them out and you lay down whatever you're wanting to bind in to your journal will fit in with those pieces. So in other words, whatever you're going to use is large enough to hold all 3 pieces of fabric. Does that make sense? I hope so. I took them out and I'll just use them as ephemera. But I'm going to glue mine. So I'm going to start with 3 pieces. I'm going to do 3, 2, 3, 2. And this does not have to be perfect. Mine's not going to be perfect. I'm not going to measure. I'm just going to eyeball where I want them. And I think this is good enough. So I'm going to use Fabrifix. Couldn't decide whether I wanted to use glitter glue or this. And I think I have a better chance with it not seeping through on the Fabrifix. And even if it does, it dries clear, so it'll be fine. So I'm just going to put a little line of glue where I'm going to put my first one and tap that down. Same on the second and third. That is my front. Now I'm going to flip it over like this. I'm going to take my second sheet and I'm going to line it up and put 2 pieces of fabric in between the 3. And I'm noticing once I flipped it over, I don't really like the position of these pieces, so I'm going to try to move the top one up just a little bit. And again, like I said, I'm going to match this one up because they are the same size papers to make sure that my 2 pieces that I'm going to add are in the middle of these 3. So I'm just going to take a couple pieces of this fabric. And if it has a right or wrong side, you want your right side up. I know that sounds backwards, but that's kind of how you want it. And then you're going to flip this one over, lay it on top. Look at this. Isn't it beautiful? Look at this tea-dyed paper. On the inside of this digital, this is a thinner one. It's not cardstock. I put some glitter glue, and forgetting that it's water-based, it leaked through, and I love the marks that it put on that. So I'm going to even up my sheets, make sure they're even, and I'm going to wrap those. I'm going to glue the 3 because we just did 2. So you're going to alternate all throughout 3, 2, 3, 2, or however many you do, you're going to want to do it like this. And then I'm going to glue these down. And I am not going to glue them extremely tight because I want whoever purchases this to be able to add things and, you know, it'll thicken it up a little bit. So the only thing about this kind of binding that a lot of people really don't like is it's not tight. Well, it shouldn't be tight. It's loose. So I mean, not that it's going to fall apart, it won't, but your sheets are not as tight as if they were 3-hole pamphlet stitch. See? Like there's space in here, and that's okay. And I may make them just a little tighter than that, actually. But I do want to leave some room for the book to be able to grow. That you can actually, ooh, I love that. Okay. So I did pull them, I've just laid them over. I didn't pull them extremely tight, like I didn't press everything down, but I did pull them somewhat tight, and it did still leave a nice amount of room to grow. And man, I like that. So I'm just going to glue the tippies down. I didn't put very much on so that I could kind of play around with it. And I guess you could, if you were very precise, which I'm not, you could go even those up before you trimmed them down. But I'm not going to do that. It's just not that big of a deal to me. I like everything not being so precise. Okay, so we've got our first 2 pages done. We're going to take our next page, lay it, same thing. Look where our 2 are. We're going to even them up with the 3 we just did. We're going to put 3 down just like these 3. Another good thing about Fabri-Tac is that if you get it off, you can just rub it and it rubs into a ball and comes right off. It's wonderful. Love this stuff. Now we're going to flip our page over, and we just did 3. So we're going to take the 2 and lay them over just like that. And on mine, if I see that it's running into my picture too much, I'm probably going to trim it down a little bit. Like, I don't really want that in my tree, so I'm going to cut it down just a little bit. This part is totally up to you, how you want to do it, how tight you want them. I actually probably didn't need 1 3/4 strips. Probably 1 1/4, 1.5 is what I ended up using. All right. So now we'll do our next sheet, which mine is actually this is a picture from a photo album, and I cut it, sewed around it, and I guess I used the top of this side on something, so I just sewed fabric onto it so there would still be a pocket. But I thought this is going to be full of Christmas memories, and definitely always need pockets. I didn't add many pockets. I've actually only added 1 pocket so far to this journal. Another way to remember how many to glue down on the new page is look at the page before. If there are 2 glued to it, you need to glue 2 to the new page. I hope that makes sense. I love this so much. Now I just did the 2, so I'm going to bring over the 3. And I think I probably left my little pieces of fabric too long, so I'm going to trim them down. And I was just kind of guesstimating how much I needed. Maybe it would have been wise not to cut them all to begin with. Maybe glue a few pages and then see how long your pieces need to be and cut from there. I'm going to go ahead and glue these. And then I'll go off camera, finish them up. I wanted to tell you one more thing about the Fabri-Fix. I say it because they make a Fabri-Tac and a Fabri-Fix. And I don't remember what the difference is, but there's not, as far as journaling goes, nothing that matters to me. It seemed like one would glue on leather and the other, I don't really remember. I honestly don't. Everything I tell you is going to be made up. I'm going to go ahead and finish these off camera, the rest of my pages, and then I will be back. And I think that's a good amount of room to grow. I'm going to go ahead and finish these up off camera, and then when I get them all bound, I will be back. Okay, so I have all of the fabric pieces glued on, all the pages glued together, and I want to tell you a few things I learned about this book. Even though there's a signature in it, and most of my papers are cardstock, I do have some scrapbook papers and some regular copy paper. Even though the front and back are cardstock, they're heavy, it's still just paper. So to me, it's not a durable cover. In other words, when I got all done and I was looking at it, I thought, this isn't going to be able to stand very well. I mean, or transport, or, you know, durable in my mind. I mean, I know all junk journals are paper, all books are just paper, but there's usually a cover that protects it all, and I felt like this didn't have that. So I worked on it, I stewed about it, I tried to come up with something to make it a little sturdier until about 1 in the morning and decided, okay, I don't have a clue how to fix it, because I wasn't happy selling this as a journal, even though it really is. So at 1 in the morning, you say a prayer that God will bring you the answer, and you go to bed, and sure enough, I got the answer. I think this is going to be a little bit anticlimactic, but this, well, one thing that I did come up with in making of the cover was this, and it is a stamp of Santa Claus and a little girl. And so I put it on muslin cloth, and I painted the back, their eyes and their cheeks. Their eyes are blue and their cheeks are a little bit cherry, rosy cherry. And I thought, oh, that's a perfect pocket for the back, because it says Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. And I thought, what a fantastic way to end this book. But for the cover, what I came up with was I created a fabric cover. And I did this. This is kind of a crushed blue velvet, and I sewed it to a used bubble mailer. And the inside is kind of this, here it textured, I don't know what it is, but I was looking through my things, trying to find something that would match the book, and I found these two materials in a bag. They were just scrap materials that I got from the secondhand shop, and I thought they were perfect. So then the cover is a collage of things. I watercolor painted this ornament, and then used the silver glitter glued around it, put in a little fussy cut in the middle. This is colored paper with Rit color, so it's kind of a blue-green. This paper here next to it is actually a used coffee filter that is tea dyed, because when I did my last tea dyeing episode, I didn't think it was dark enough, so I threw in some of my coffee filters thinking it would pull darker, and it did. And then it also, of course, dyed the filter. And so that is what this is. And then there's a little bit of doily, some vellum that I printed on. It says Christmas Memories. Put a little enamel dots. This is some baking paper here behind that. And then in the very back, around the edge, is packing paper that I stamped with a, just word stamp. But it has nice sound. And I think and then on the enclosure, I just used some of those, I'm not sure what they're called, alligator mouth, I don't know, some kind of a clamp enclosure, and it has a little hole. So I ran the crinkle seam binding through that, and I didn't knot it on either end, because I thought maybe that whoever gets this would want to change it, or maybe the bells would drive them crazy. So of course I had to put silver bells on it. And then this is just like, I don't know if you would call it a journal carrier or a journal, because it's not attached. And then I just, of course, tied it in here. And this, to me, made it a journal, because it will stand up. It has some protection, and I loved it. I thought that made it complete. So what I learned from this is, if I make another one with the tab binding, I would, for the cover, use a single sheet. Say this was heavier scrapbook paper. I would use it, and I would glue it to whatever I intended, you know, to use for my cover, something sturdier like this cardboard or cardstock. Before you put on your cover piece, though, you will want to make your backing your first set of fabric or whatever you decide to use. You want that to be first instead of the paper. So your cover would be first for your fabrics. And then when you were done, you could go ahead and put on your cover piece. And two things, it's going to give it a lot more strength, a lot more durability, and your fabric pieces won't be on the front cover like mine was, which I liked it because they're crochet, they're, you know, they blend in with my picture, but it would make it easier if it was something like this. So that's all there is to it. It's as simple as that. I took 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, folded them in two after I printed my digitals. You know, get any kind of papers that you want. And not even papers. Some of these are not papers like this. This is, like I said, a photo holder that I bound in. And I did put in the signature. The signature, I did a 3-hole pamphlet stitch in the middle of it, just like a normal signature. And then did the fabric pieces like you would, just like it was one sheet of paper. And in this signature, I think there's 8 pieces of paper, maybe. A fabric piece. I mean, anything you want, just like normal. And another thing is, I left some leeway. I left some give, if you will, room for this to grow. So in other words, when I glued down my fabric pieces, I didn't pull them really tight. I left space for this to grow. And as you can see, just from, and I don't even have my ephemera in it yet, it sits really nice. It's not too much of a gator mouth, you know, so the back of it will be able to grow with your book. See, it can come up and be able to grow as you add pictures or whatever you're wanting in there. And I do love this. I love the tab binding. It's super simple. I mean, that's all there is to it. I would recommend at least trying it. I made one of these before, and I didn't remember feeling the way I did with this one when it was done, like it wasn't complete. But looking back, I did just this. I had a hardcover and did it that way. And the book was smaller, too. So it wasn't like, I mean, it stood a lot easier. It was thinner. And all of the tutorials I saw with this tab binding, I mean, I'm sure there are more, but the ones I saw with the tab binding, they were thin, like maybe this much, this many pages. So it was easier for it to, you know, hold sturdy or whatever. But I do feel this is sturdy now. I think it was sturdy. It just, to me, it wasn't complete without a cover, and I didn't feel like these were adequate. I don't know. Maybe it was just in my mind. And the positives to this is that when you print the digitals and you have such beautiful pictures, I mean, like you don't have to see part of it here and part of it in the back, like a normal bound in, a normal pamphlet stitch. Like here is the front part of my Santa paper, and then you flip all the way to the back of the signature, and there's the other part of the Santa. What I liked about this was these beautiful digitals. You open up your pages, and there they are. The whole scene is right there, and you can write. And I'll definitely need to make a writing board for this one because I have a lot of, you know, sewing and different textures that would not probably be the best to write on, not to mention your fabric pieces that are on here. But I loved that you could open it up and see the whole entire picture. And the ones that I folded the opposite way, I didn't feel like, I mean, it was just, they're just beautiful. They didn't have to be a whole picture, but I thought the scenes like this, if I were to fold it in half, only half his head would be with Santa Claus, and I didn't think his rear end would be on your back half, and I didn't like that. So I hope you like this tutorial. I hope you will give this a try because it is super easy to put together. It's just being consistent with, to me, being consistent with your pieces and making sure that the pieces that you put in are pretty much the same height. I mean, you can have some shorter, but they still have to be able to fit in with the highest amount of fabric or whatever you're using. I keep saying fabric because that's what I used. So like if you did 5-4, you would want to make sure all 5 pieces, your paper is big enough to fit all 5 pieces. I hope that makes sense, and I hope I'm not confusing this even more. But I loved it. I love how it turned out. Love being able to write on this. I just think this is a really cool way to bind a journal. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I know this is probably a little late to do a Christmas journal, but I've been wanting to do this one, and it's finally done, and I'm very happy with it. I hope you like it. Hopefully it will be in my Etsy shop in the morning, and I'll have a video of a walkthrough with all the pieces that I add to it. But see, I think that looks nice. I think this fabric cover, even though it's not attached, I think it, for me, was needed. And then when you, of course, take out your journal, you still get the beauty of seeing all of this. All right, I hope you give it a try. I will see you next time. Bye.